Hey everyone, it's Mr. Silly coming at you with a video on Unit 2, Lesson 2, which is about no argument constructors. So today we're going to get started with talking about what is a constructor and how do we build one. So let's go over to Lesson 2, if I can, and we're going to get started. All right, first things first here, we have just simply a little bit of code that we want to run. And kind of the main thing you should probably pay attention to is the fact that um, we have a new method that won't really matter until later called print constructors. That's something that code.org has created. But more importantly, we now have Valerie, which is the new vlogger object, and we use things like get name and get your joined. So those are new methods that we've never seen before up until this point. So I can see in the console that it printed the new vlogger and the 2022, which is some variables that clearly have been assigned. If you take a look at vlogger.java, that's the other class, you're going to notice that on line 12, there's this thing called public vlogger, and it does something interesting. So vlogger matches the same name as the class, you can see, which also matches the same name as the Java file. So instead of public class vlogger, if you put public vlogger with parentheses, you've now created a constructor. What this allows me to do is assign values to these variables called name and year joined. So let's dive into this a little bit more. And kind of the first four modules are kind of going to be pretty easy where you just kind of play around with this. Um, and all they want you to do on module two is just basically try to change those variables, the values assigned to those instance variables. Remember, variables are basically little storage bins to you can assign values to. In this case, the class, that's not the main class, called Vlogger, has two variables called name and year joined. What's happening on line 12 is we have nothing in the parentheses. So basically, when I create a Vlogger object, what it's telling me is that we need the name to be set to new Vlogger and year joined to be 2022. So let's change this to the new Vlogger, maybe make it KSI. And then year joined instead of 2022, let's make it 2021. I'm going to go ahead and run this because on the tester class, they're going to go ahead and run what the value of the name is and the year joined. And there you go. So I updated these values for name and year joined, and that's what it spits out. If we take one more look at Vlog Runner, you'll notice that in lines 10 and 11, it does say name, right? That's going to what's going to print. It's in quotations, so it's going to print it literally. And then it says Valerie.getName. Again, Valerie is the Vlogger object. That's just the name of it. If I want to change it, I can. Let's just call it, uh, what Paul, right? Or Logan Paul or whatever his name is. We can change all of these objects to Paul and the same thing will happen, right? So instead of Valerie, I've instantiated a Paul object. So everything that's using Valerie, I'm going to replace to Paul, and then you'll see that the same thing will happen. Okay, so let's keep moving on because we have a couple new methods and it's easy to just gloss over it, but I do want to spend some time as we move along here to go over them. All right, so then they want me to comment out the lines inside the constructor. Um, So if we go to vlogger.java, again, that constructor is called vlogger. It's really confusing because the name of the file is vlogger, the name of the class on line 4 is vlogger, and now we have this other thing that's called a vlogger. So again, what this is doing is it's saying basically what's happening is when I create or instantiate a vlogger object, if I have nothing in the parentheses, then this is what it's going to default to. Okay. So here, if I go ahead and um, comment out, I think that's what they want me to do. The year joined and the name. Let's see what happens. So now there's no default values. So when I try to run what are the values for name and year, it gives me null and joined is 0. So that's what it defaults to. So ideally in programming, we don't want things to just return null or 0, right? We want to give it some sort of default value in the event that there's nothing there. Okay, so now they want me to add the following code for Vlogger. So instead of name KSI, they want me to change it to new user. I think that's what they had before, and the year was 2021. Okay. So I'm gonna turn those back on. Let's see. And then obviously what's going to happen here is since I just restored the default values, it's going to print new user and you're joined. So basically all we're doing is we're just playing around with uh, just what happens when you instantiate an object with nothing in the parentheses. Recall that in unit 1, we were dealing with painter, right? So when we had painter, a lot of times we would just do, painter Whitley equals new painter and nothing in the parentheses. It was possible for you to spawn, as I showed you in class, just a way to cheat was you could spawn a painter, and inside the parentheses at the end, if you put in 2 comma 3, then that would force the painter to spawn at an x coordinate of 2, y coordinate of 3. So we were actually kind of working with constructors already. We just never saw the code because we never got access to the painter coding. All right, here you'll notice that it gets a little bit more difficult pretty quickly, but it's not too bad. First thing I want me to do is go to the painting class in this case, and they want me to write this no argument constructor. That's what they want me to do. Okay. So I'm going to write the no argument constructor. And what we're going to do for that, kind of the formula is, do you see how it says public class painting, right? We have public, so in this case, instead of public class painting, we're going to drop the class keyword and just write public painting with the parentheses and a curly brace. So what that's going to look like is public instead of class painting. We're just going to do painting and do the parentheses and then a curly brace. And this is going to create the no argument constructor. No argument just means there's nothing in the parentheses. It'll make more sense as we go through a parameterized constructor in the next lesson. So you did public painting, and then we're going to assign a default name to the instance variable title. So that's right up here on line 6. This creates a private instance variable called title, and it takes in the string data type, which means it's text. There's another one called year, right, that's a different variable, and it's ready to receive whole numbers, integers. So inside public painting, the no argument constructor, I'm going to go ahead and set the value of title to be new painting. That's what they want in their to-dos. And the year to be default to 2023. Now I'm going to go ahead and run this just to make sure we're error-free. And did it do it? Yeah, there's no errors. That's great. Now to do number 2, go back to Art Runner, and let's go instantiate a painting object. So again, it's a painting object from the painting class. I'm going to do painting. I just call Gorski equals new painting. And that's going to instantiate the painting object. And then they want me to run the constructor or print with the constructor helper. So run the constructor helper to print the attributes of the constructor. In other words, what are the variables that this constructor has? So I'm going to go ahead and go to how do I print the information? And I'll give you the code right here. Again, this is like their own code that they developed. So this is not like something baked into Java. And instead of Fido in the parentheses, we're going to do Gorski. Let's go ahead and run it. And you'll see that once we do that, it says painting class constructors, and it says public painting. That's the only constructor we have right now. Okay, so do I need to test this to make sure that I've done everything? Yep, and we succeeded, so I can finish. And I want you to do one more module here. So I'm going to go ahead and move on because there's a lot more to cover. We'll go through the notes as well, but something to consider is what are the values here. Let me try and zoom in a bit. There we go. So a block of code that has the same name as the class and tells the computer how to create a new object. That's going to be the constructor. The constructor no parameters is a no argument constructor. The first line constructor, which includes the public keywords. So when it says public painting parentheses, that is the constructor signature. And that default value is probably, you could probably guess, it's a predefined value that is used by a program when the user does not provide a value. Oh. All right, for module 7, let's do the club class. Oops, that's a little too much. Okay. So the club class, let's just go through to-dos one by one. Okay, so take your time on this. We're going to go to the club class. So the club runner and club. And the first thing I want me to do is declare those instance variables. We're going to talk more about private versus public. But the idea with doing private instance variables is it allows us to kind of shield the variable from getting overwritten. Um, when you have public, like public class club, that means whatever that is available across all the classes. So if I write any methods that are public within the uh, club class, then I can use that method from anywhere in the code, in the program. So in general, you'll be working with private instance variables. I know we turn things to public because we want to kind of keep those values in the variables like contained. We don't want everyone coming along and overriding them in a different program. So first thing we're going to do is declare these private instance variables. So I'm going to have private. And then remember kind of the format here, I'll just write it is public or private. The first kind of keyword. And then the next word that's going to come up is the data type, right? So it could be string, double, boolean, and then you're going to come up with the same name as the class name for the constructor, and then parentheses and a curly brace. So that's how it's going to work. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm messing this up. Data type and then variable name, my bad. And the variable name could be whatever you want it to be. So for the first one, they want it to be private, obviously. Instance variables name sponsor, and you do a semicolon at the end, and that's it. Oh, sorry, I forgot the data type. Sponsor is a name, it's a text, so that's going to be string. And you'll see now the variable name turns red. Next time I'm going to do a private instance variable of the number of members. So that's an integer, right? Because you can't have half a person. And you want it to be num members. This is straight from the to-dos on the left. So we did that. Let's go ahead and run it. Just make sure there's no errors. And there's not. Okay, so for the no argument constructor, what they want us to do is, again, the format is we're going to do public, and then it's just a class name. And then in parentheses and curly brace. That's it. That's the format. So it's going to be public. In this case, the class name is club, parentheses, curly brace. This is your no argument constructor. So we need default values here. And what they're asking you to do is set the sponsor variable to be new sponsor. So if someone comes along and doesn't designate a sponsor, when they spawn or instantiate the club object, it'll just default to new sponsors, the sponsor. And then for the num members, they want it to be defaulted to 1. Okay, so I can go ahead and run it and just check that there's no errors, which there aren't. Now I'm going to instantiate that club object. So let's go ahead and do instantiate the ASB club object. So it's going to be the club class. So it's going to be club ASB equals new club. I have nothing in the parentheses, right? So there's my object. And then finally, what they want me to do is just print the attributes of it. So we're going to go to constructor, the helper here. I'm going to copy and paste their little code. And again, this is kind of what they've created, not me. And instead of Fido in the parentheses, we're going to put ASB because that's our new object that we printed or that we created. And you'll notice that it prints the constructors in club class, and it's just public club. And if you test it, we should probably pass just fine, which we did. We can move on. Go ahead and do one more here, maybe song or team, but the method is the same here that you create. Last but not least, food truck. What they want me to do here is, excuse me, we have food truck runner, and they want us to make a dessert class. So most of you don't have a dessert class yet, probably. So I'm going to go ahead and hit new file, and then we're going to call it dessert. 2 S's, I believe. Yep. And then what we're going to do is we're going to import the code. So if you click this hyperlink on the left, it'll take you to a new landing page, and this is going to give you all of the code that's pre-built for the dessert class. There's cookie pie, donut, cupcake we'll use later. If I come back here, I can copy and paste it. There you go. So it's very simple. They're just saying, hey, we created 2 variables called flavor and price. Done. While I'm at this, let's go and commit this code. So if you commit code, it'll save it forever. So here's the, unit 2, lesson 2, dessert class. And I can put commit notes. click on desert.java, and it'll commit and save. Okay, so that's done. So now we can do to-do number one. So we're going to write that no argument constructor so that it defaults the flavor to plain, price to 50 cents. So how we're going to do that is we're going to come down here and remember the no argument constructor is going to be the same thing as the class. So it's public, instead of class dessert, it's just going to be public dessert with parentheses. And there's our constructor. Nothing in the parentheses means it's a no argument constructor. And then we're going to go ahead and default the word flavor to, the variable flavor to be plain. And the price is defaulted to 50 cents. Now I'm going to go back to food truck runner. Let's go and run it. Just make sure I didn't mess anything up. Okay, no errors. That's good. Now I'm going to go ahead and instantiate that dessert object. So dessert, what should we call this? A donut equals new dessert. Okay, so it's going to spawn that new donut object. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to go ahead and print the constructor helper. Right here. And instead of name of object, it'll be donut. Let's go and run this. There it goes. Okay, so if you're ever curious, like, Southard, how do I know that the value called plain and 50 cents is actually inside donut? Like, how can I see that? This is some of the things that CodeDar won't show you yet. So we're going to go ahead and write system.println. And I'm going to say the default flavor is, right, because that's what we have here. I'm going to concatenate with, and if you look at dessert.java, did they write it? Oh, they didn't write the method yet. Okay. I'll show you later how to show the return. That's okay. I'll show it to you later. That's fine. We took care of what we need to for this lesson. In class, I'll show you how to print the actual variable values, but it's not needed for today anyway. So let's go ahead and do our test, and then we'll finish. My internet somehow is being slow. There we go. Okay, so we succeeded everything, so now I can move on. One last thing I'll show you is just the check for understanding. So basically what's happening here is we're trying to pick which of the following would give those instance variables correctly, like have basically which one's the correct no argument constructor. So you'll see there's a couple, they look all the same, but they're not. So we have public notebook, public notebook, public notebook. So I know all of these A, B, C, D, E, the first line is correct. Those are all no argument constructors. In A, I see color is defaulted to just text that's blank. Num pages is 0. Okay. In B, we have color is called none and number of pages is -1. Well, we don't want that to be a default, right? Because -1, there's not possible to have that many pages. C, I see we have a constructor called notebook. It defaults the value or the color of the notebook to white and the number of pages to 50. Okay, that sounds about right. Like we got something to work with, a default value. D has the same thing for color, but number of pages is 0, which seems kind of weird to have a notebook with 0 pages, right? That means you have no notebook. And lastly, E is setting color to blank and number of pages to 50. Typically, when we do default values, you want it to be some value. You don't want just blanks coming out. Why is that, you might ask? Well, remember when I kept everything blank for that no argument constructor, the default values that Java is going to assign is null for color and 0 for num pages. So if you're fine with that, then don't write anything for the variables. But if you don't want to do that and say we have a lot of notebooks and the default color is white, the number of pages should be 50, that actually has some sort of value now. That's correct. All right, good luck with this, and I can answer more questions when I see you.